welcome back to Rising. Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Let's talk about these tariffs. This was a big moment, not just for President Trump, but for the balance of power in this country. In a 6-3 ruling, the Supreme Court struck down President Trump's sweeping global tariffs, saying he overstepped his authority under a 1977 emergency law that doesn't even mention tariffs. Chief Justice John G. Roberts Jr. wrote the majority opinion, joined by Justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Amy Coney Barrett, and Neil M. Gorsuch, including 2 conservatives appointed by President Trump himself. That's really significant. For much of his second term, the court has handed the president a majority of wins on immigration, executive power, and agency authority. But this time, the justices drew a line. They said Congress, not the president, controls trade. President Trump responded by praising only Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Brett Kavanaugh, who dissented. But he lashed out at the majority. Take a look.
They're just being fools and lapdogs for the rhinos and the radical left Democrats, and not that this should have anything at all to do with it. They're very unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution.
Now, you would think a ruling like this might prompt a recalibration. Instead, within hours, the president announced a new across-the-board 10% tariff, citing a different statute, Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act, and signaled he probably will go even further. Now, the fact is, as my friend Robbie always points out, tariffs are taxes. And while they're often framed as punishing foreign countries, American importers pay them first. Since last year, more than $200 billion has been collected. Now at least $100 billion, possibly $133 billion, could actually have to be refunded. Trade lawyers say that process could take months, even years, involving Customs and Border Protection and the U.S. Court of International Trade. Justice Kavanaugh himself warned the refund effort could be a mess. Beyond the legal drama, the economic fallout has been real. Markets have been whipsawed, shifting by tariff threats. Businesses can't plan. Allies feel pressured. Trade deals negotiated just months ago are suddenly completely in question. And there's a potential $1 trillion hole in the federal budget because tariff revenue was helping offset Trump's recent tax cuts. And while Trump is doubling down, Democrats are seeing an opportunity here. They're already centering affordability in their midterm messaging, and this ruling gives them a fresh argument that the president's tariff strategy created chaos, raised costs, and most importantly, bypassed Congress. Even some Republicans, including Senator Mitch McConnell, called the president's approach illegal and welcomed this court's decision. So this wasn't just a trade ruling, it was a constitutional one. The Supreme Court showed independence. The president showed defiance. And the rest of us are left watching an economy and economic strategy that keeps shifting under our feet. It might be time for the base to tell the president, nobody wants this.
Well, I have nothing to disagree with you here. I oppose the tariffs too, and more importantly, they're not constitutional. The president did not have the authority to do this. I know that frustrates him very much, but I'll just say, look, if this is such a good idea to do these tariffs, well, that option is available to the president and is still available. The Republicans have a majority of Congress. Just pass a law that implements the tariffs or directly prescribes him the authority to do this using the specific language, then that would be fine. They won't do it because Republicans in Congress don't actually support these tariffs. Some of them do, but not enough of them to get it passed. They just won't admit that because they don't want mean old President Trump yelling at them and they don't want to appear to go against him. But good number of Senate Republicans, not rhinos, know that it was conservative, free market ideology has been opposed to tariffs for the longest time. It is Trump who's an outlier on this. Most conservatism has never been. Tariffs are just taxes. They're taxes on the American people. They're just raising the price of things American people pay for. So it's the mechanism is different, but it's no different than Trump saying we should increase sales tax on everybody without any trade-off. I'm fine with having more sales tax and less income tax, but this is just we're leaving taxes the way they are and adding an additional sales tax. That is what Trump has done with these tariffs. The power to tax originates with Congress, not with the president. So the Supreme Court totally reasonably and correctly said, So sorry, if you want to tax the American people, you have to go to Congress and ask Congress to raise this tax on American people. That's it. It's not more complicated than that. Trump thinks it's such a good idea. Get his Republicans to get on board with it. They won't do it because they know, and he should know, that taxing the American people is very unpopular, and nobody wants it done, and good riddance.
We saw last week when Trump's key players in his staff, like Susie Wiles, all gathered together for a meeting around strategy about what the plan is. Yeah, there's a conversation about affordability and how to really hone in on that message, as opposed to what's happening right now in the public is a lot about the SAVE Act and who's voting. But there's a real conversation. They know that they have to get back the people believing that they can control this economy. And so the president should have taken this moment as maybe an opportunity to pause, knowing that the direct implications of this, even though we haven't seen them yet and not 100% sure how it will look, could be that things get lower priced for Americans. So going into the midterms, you could look good as the party in charge if tariffs are not high, making prices.
If I was Trump, I would try to spin this as, well, look, we accomplished our goal with the tariffs because we worked out all these great trade deals and the rest of the world's taking us more seriously and they achieved their goal diplomatically. This is how I would spin it. And so we don't need them anymore anyway. So
but what he's doing now is just
all done.
He just enforced a different law and a different tariff. And so he's still going to make things more expensive for the average American.
The authority.
Right, but that, again, we know what tariffs do to small business owners, big business owners, and then the cost gets passed to us. We saw that. That's why Costco is suing the administration, saying they absorb some of the costs, they want their money back. And even governors, I believe it was J.B. Pritzker that put out a memo online, like, you need to pay back about X million dollars to people that live in my state because it's how much we paid. And he said, past due on the notice. So people kind of want their money back that they spent over the last few months that costs more. And so the president has to really think about the fact that the Supreme Court, which a lot of people have criticized for leaning in his favor, is dissenting. You know,
this is not because the idea that the Supreme Court was just backing up whatever Trump wanted was a false liberal notion to begin with. The Supreme Court, it's 9 people who are independent thinkers. There are a lot of decisions you don't hear about very much. They don't get reported on that are 9-0. There's plenty of times where they all of them come together to rule against the federal government.
Like Clarence Thomas and a couple of them just do whatever Trump wants to do. Because if you are truly a conservative and you also want to go by the law that's by the letter in the book, then you would know that these tariffs were illegal, and you also would say this doesn't align with my conservative values.
Well, Kavanaugh took the position, and Clarence Thomas took the position that law was Congress giving the president this exact power to do tariffs in an emergency. That's the position they took. The majority did not agree that this emergency authorization law had anything to do with tariffs and said you couldn't do that. So there's still, I see why the people on the other side ruled that way. It's not because they want to rubber stamp whatever the president wants to do. They thought he had been permitted by Congress to do this because it's an emergency. The majority was not persuaded by that, said, well, what's the emergency? No one can point to an emergency here. And that it didn't mention tariffs, and so they can't do that.
The immediate response of adding a new tariff under a new law that he has the jurisdiction, I guess, to do, as well as calling the Supreme Court lapdogs, is going to hurt him in the midterms. That's not a good strategy forward, and I don't understand what he expects to come out of that.
Yelled at the Supreme Court during his State
fresh
of the
from
Union
memory
address.
He said, Julian Manchester, our Hill reporter, asked him if the Supreme Court justices are still invited to the State of the Union tomorrow, and he said barely. That was Trump's response. So,
well, we'll see which ones show up. They don't always show up. Next up, President Trump urging Netflix to fire one of the members of its board of directors. The reason why is coming up. Stay with us.